Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now Show, the voice of the DSO industry. Kim Larson and Bill Newman talk to industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. Visit groupdentistrynow.com for more DSO analysis, news, and events. Looking for a job or have a job to fill? Visit joindso.com. We hope you enjoy today's show.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Group Dentistry Now Show. I'm Bill Newman, and as always, thanks everybody for listening in today. We appreciate it. Without an audience like you, we wouldn't have the next two guests that I'm really excited to talk to. Without further ado, we have Sheri Jolly. She is the CEO of DSE Practice Solutions. Sheri, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. And we have Dr. Barry Quinn, who is the owner of Comfort Dental Braces. Dr. Quinn, thanks for being on the Group Dentistry Now Show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sheri, I will start with you. Can you give our audience a little bit of background on you? So personally, your bio, how you got started in the dental industry, and then maybe we could talk to Dr. Quinn, get his bio, and then we'll start to talk about DSE and go from there.
Well, I kind of fell into the industry of dentistry. When I was a young person, I was tired of working in restaurants. And so I got a real job, a real grown-up job at a front desk at a dentist's office when I was 19. And I just kind of mastered and moved on to the next task, to the next task, to the next task. And, you know, I was a dental assistant. I was a chairside assistant. I ended up later on in my 30s, I did go back to college and finish my degree, but I ended up in management in dental practices. And I started DSE as a problem that I needed to solve as a manager in a dental practice. And so that's kind of how we came all the way to, you know, the late 90s to 2016 when I started DSE. It was basically, I've been in all parts of the practice. I know how the practice works. And the industry has changed so much from my starting point to now. And that's kind of what DSE is about. It's just moving with the changes, solving the new problems that are coming on, and helping the industry kind of evolve.
Okay, we're gonna dig a lot deeper into what DSE does in a second. Dr. Barry Quinn. So talk to me a little bit about, you know, your backgrounds, and I believe you have a number of locations now in Ohio. So how did you get involved? How did you get involved in dentistry, and then now why all of a sudden do you have group practice?
Well, yeah, the dentistry part was just that was just the route school took me, and kind of wanted to be a dentist since I was younger, and was just good at science and math, so kept going. And I graduated McGill University in Canada in 2002, and then went on to get my orthodontics in 2005 from Jacksonville University. In 2007, I found out about Comfort Dental, and I really liked their kind of group setting. They're a franchise-based group, so the vast majority of dentists are owners. There are some associates, but it's to lead towards ownership. So I really liked the group setting of Comfort Dental, and I joined in 2007 in Denver, Colorado, and then in 2018. There was the opportunity to build some offices in Ohio because they didn't have an orthodontist. They had approximately 45 general dentists with 13 offices, and no orthodontist. So I said, okay, I will come and build here. And I had two general dental partners who were building it with me, and that's really where I got to meet Sheri, because the management part was a little bit too much for me to handle by myself. And so really working with Sheri has been just very much made things happen. It would have been too much for me to handle all by myself.
All right, that's a great lead into Sheri and what DSE is. So you mentioned it a little bit on your during your introduction, which is you were working in a dental practice, right? And you had issues, and so DSE really was the solution to some of the problems you were having. And then I guess you left the dental practice and went out on your own.
Yes, that in a nutshell, it's traditional in a practice of a certain size, basically up to a certain size, that the main biller is also the office manager. And I was in a growing practice where it was becoming increasingly difficult to either be the biller and make sure that the money was, had my hand on the financial part of it, or actually manage the day-to-day parts of the practice. There are a lot of things as the bigger a practice gets that you have to manage. There's sort of, equipment, staff, vacation, all of these things that a manager gets tasked to do. And I started being conflicted about which job I had to do today. And I couldn't do both of them at the same time. And the problem I ran into was more patients came in with more different types of insurance plans. And so we weren't necessarily getting more per patient. And the workload was, when I wanted to hire somebody and I wanted to make the numbers work and make a presentation to my boss about hiring someone to take over some of this load, it was not going to result in a huge amount of increase in revenue. It was really just going to keep me from burning out. And that is because insurance reimbursements were not increasing. But the amount of time that it takes to manage insurance was increasing. So it needed more manpower, it needed more hours. And even with all the new, we were very, and I always have been very, use the technology that's available to you, use it to its fullest, don't do anything the hard way. It was still kind of like, it's costing us more money to do this. And how are we going to make it work? Because our patients were all calling us saying, hey, do you take my insurance? Almost every patient that called us, a new patient, was like that. So I started researching how to solve that problem, how to not burn out, how to manage the insurance without letting another part of the job suffer. And I found out that there were companies out there that were dental billing companies. And that's what that was our sole task when we started, was this dental billing company. I found out the technology they were using and I figured out how to use it. And that's kind of where we started. And so now we help all kinds of burned out office managers and keep them from being burned out. And that's really where we started. And then we have grown in the last 6 years based on pain points that our clients had. Because I ran a practice and I ran several practices and big and little practices, I kind of knew the pain points. And when somebody needs someone to answer the phone, we found it. When somebody needed somebody to verify benefits, we found it. And that's how we turned into basically a full service organization. We fill in the gaps in the administrative and business processes for practices in the United States.
Dr. Quinn, when you started working with Sheri and DSE, was it on the billing side? Is that really when things started?
Yeah, it was actually right at the beginning. So I was introduced to Sheri through the two general dental partners that I have. They're the doctors who run the overall franchise of Comfort Dental. I do the braces part in Ohio. And so Sheri was doing some billing and some other tasks at some of their locations. And really, when I was introduced to her, it was going to be kind of multifaceted. It would be to help with creating a call center, to help with hiring the initial staff, to setting up all of the insurance contracts and billing. So it really was kind of from day one, let's start building the template. So she kind of had quite a few of the buckets. I always, liken it to being a juggler. How many pins can you juggle? Can you juggle 5? Can you juggle 6? So how many can you hand off so that you can do what you're best at best? And so, she really was with us from the start.
So Dr. Quinn mentioned a lot of things besides just the billing and insurance side of it. So tell us what else DSE does.
Well, we do credentialing, which is a big headache for a lot of people. And we can do some customized problem solving. I have helped people design a department before. I have trained their staff, and I say but it is not just me. It is my team. We have 28 people on our team. And so it's kind of hybrid consulting / service. Sometimes we do it for you and sometimes we teach you how, but we are usually in the HR circle. We are in the billing circle. We're in the training circle. We're in the management. Kind of sometimes we, like Dr. Quinn and I, will have meetings about, this location, we should do this here. We should, and so a little bit of strategy and management of practices. So basically all of the gaps in management that any practice is experiencing, we can jump in and fill that for you.
And that makes a lot of sense. If you look at as groups scale up, they typically are started right by clinicians. And then as you start to scale up and you need more and more, services to support these multiple locations. I love Dr. Quinn's analogy to the juggling and the pins up in the air and not necessarily, being really good at maybe a couple of those specific tasks, and then the others you want to give to somebody that's much better than you, right? Or have somebody teach somebody at your organization that can do that. So you're really there. And you kind of think of the S in DSO, the support side of it. You are the S, and you can do various things, and that's great. So as far as the type of clients that you have, would you say it's mostly emerging groups, larger groups? Who do you work with?
Well, at the beginning, it was small groups and startups, but as we have gotten bigger, we have started working with emerging groups, and I feel like that is where everybody wins the most, is when we get groups like Dr. Quinn's group and other groups where they're emerging into maybe from 3 locations and they're trying to go up. That's usually where we usually make the most positive impact, is when they have independently running locations and they need everything to be going the same way. That's usually where we can really help that. We can help them scale into operating as a bigger entity instead of 3 individual entities or 2 individual entities. And that's really where we see the most positive effect. But we do have big groups and small groups. And we like I said, we started out with individual startup practices, 1 doctor practices, and we still have a few of those on our list.
You mentioned you had around 28 team members, and do you have people of those team members? Are they experts in certain areas? Is that kind of how that works?
Sometimes they are, and sometimes we make them experts. I have to say that one of the biggest struggles in any dental office is that on the clinical side, everybody's trained and licensed, and there's criteria that tests they have to pass to get a license to practice. But in the front of the house, most of them are thrown in. They're just told to figure it out. And that's because the dentist doesn't know. And what I have found by doing multiple cleanup jobs is somebody with a good attitude who didn't really know the right thing to do. And we ended up having to do a clean up a mess or clean up an overwhelming pile they didn't understand how to staff. Like a lot of times they don't understand how to staff a workload, what one person can do, what one person can do with the right technology, that type of thing. So one of the things that we really focus on when we bring on team members and also when we join teams is training and making sure that we're all following best practices. That we spend so much time on training, and sometimes I call it my rule following heart. sometimes people don't love the rule following, but we do a lot of that.
Dr. Quinn, I'd love to get a little feedback from you as far as what does the relationship look like as far as you and your team with Sheri and her team. What does that look like on a weekly and monthly basis? How does that all work?
I think it's pretty seamless because kind of everybody who was on Sheri's team who works with our team kind of just feels like a part of one team. Sheri, the call center comes out of her office. But then when there are specific things to clinic, those calls get forwarded. So our front staff and her call center are very integrated. Her team will do the insurance, preparation, and then, put notes. We have a daily email that prepares for the day. So they'll have let us know what the benefits are, who's active, who's not, things that we may have to. So the communication is pretty seamless. So that's on the insurance and the call center. And then, Sheri's team also runs our HR. So they basically know everybody, help with all of the benefits and things like that. And I'm kind of a bit more involved now with payroll, but Sheri's team was doing payroll before. So really everybody knows everybody. So it kind of just feels like one big team.
No, that's great. I'd love to maybe dive a little deeper in a couple of these different buckets. I think that's what you call them, Dr. Quinn, buckets, which I like that analogy. So call center, tell me how that works, Sheri.
Well, we receive all the incoming calls for all 7 of their locations. And then because we use an electronic, it's called a VoIP system, there are phones in every clinic that are extensions of the big phone system that we all use. And then every person at a phone is using the same system, basically. So there's phones in every clinic, and then extensions at every desk. And then when the calls come in, we have protocols of, are they asking a clinical question? Well, if they're asking a clinical question, they must talk to the clinic. And so we have a messaging system that's up all day. And so they'll message the clinic, whichever clinic it needs to be, because there's usually multiple clinics open on the same day. We'll say, Columbus, we are sending so-and-so's mother in, she has a question. And then they know before the phone rings who's calling and why. And so that's kind of how we do that. And then we take, incoming calls, and we do outgoing calls, mostly about appointments and things of that nature. If days open up, all that kind of stuff. And then anytime there's a question about an account or a patient or a treatment, we just make sure that we have a protocol that we know who we're supposed to ask and how long that person has to get back to us. And so on the clinic side, we're supposed to get back to them, and they're supposed to get back to us, depending on what the question is and who had to make the phone call. And then everything goes in the chart. All the communication goes in the chart. And the key to all of that is documenting every conversation.
And Dr. Quinn, were you always using a call center? Or did you initially start off with taking the calls at the practice level?
So this is my first experience with anything like this. When I was in Colorado, I practiced for 11 years, and everything just functioned like I was a franchise owner. I owned 4 office with 2 other orthodontists, and it was just standard. All calls came in, our front desk answered the phones, like a traditional office. Everybody was in-house. When I moved to Ohio, it started off with Sheri kind of organizing our phones. I can't remember exactly when we brought it fully to a call center. I think it was when we got to a certain number of locations. But ever since I came to Ohio, Sheri was pretty integral in setting up how we were going to kind of operate a few of those buckets.
Yeah, that's actually basically what happened. Is as the clinics opened up, and there were more people, the more people we needed to answer the phone, when we had 2 clinics, we needed people in 2 places, and then 3 places. And so that's kind of when we turned it into all the calls come into 1 place, and we still have the same number of people answering the phones and nothing's getting dropped. And because the clinics were not always open on the same day. So instead of making people drive to multiple locations, they went to 1 place and all the calls came in. But cloud-based software is real important to that. Being able to look at any location's schedule and any location's clinical notes or anything like that was really a big factor in making that successful.
Is there a certain number of practices where you recommend the call center, like a number of locations, or does that really vary on the needs of the office?
It varies on the needs of the office and the demographic and the call volume. So it's really the call volume that's the issue. There are some places where the phone rings all day long and they have an incredibly full front desk. And then there are other places where their staff can handle the call volume. And a lot of it has to do with the type of insurance those patients have and the type of treatment that is done. And so it's really not necessarily a size as much as it's volume. If you're getting 100 calls a day, probably one person's not going to be doing anything else but answering the phone.
I'd like to pivot now a little bit. You mentioned human resources, and that's always a lot of fun. So what does DSE do for their clients when it comes to HR?
Well, we make sure that they have a system in place. Many times they don't. Many times they don't have any kind of system. It's just kind of like, hey, I like you, come work here. And we kind of go through all the protocols. We run a background check. We make sure they have all of the HIPAA and the OSHA training done. And we try to make sure that they've received actual training for their job, which means we have to make sure there's materials to train them with. And so sometimes we're making training material. I know for Comfort Dental, we made just basically how to use our computer system, a little tutorial for the new hires. And whenever I think we introduced a new system of like how to, I think it was how to introduce a contract. And we had a little tutorial that everybody had to take. So that's kind of what we do, is make sure you actually have systems in place, make sure you actually have a handbook, make sure we know what you're offering. And it's basically, we organize it in a way. We don't actually make the final decision on hire, or we basically tee it up for the practice. So we find the people, we make sure the people get to the practice, we make sure if they want them, that they have all of their ducks in a row. And then, of course, the other HR part is occasionally I'll get a call and say, so this happened in our clinic today. What should we do? And when I don't know, I have a great number of resources in the field with HR certificates that I rely on. So we usually, if we don't know the answer, we go find the answer.
And so you're actually doing some of the staff hiring as well.
Yeah, we're doing the staff. Yeah, like I said, we tee it up for them. The doctor, the clinic, and the team makes the decision. But
you're doing a lot of the recruiting work, maybe.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And so is that office staff? Is that who you're recruiting?
Yeah, I don't recruit doctors.
Okay.
I haven't been recruiting. The doctors recruit doctors, but I the other staff we do.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's great to know. I wasn't aware of that. So that's great that the audience understands that as well. All right. Revenue cycle management. We talked a little bit about the billing side of things. Would you mind just kind of highlighting what you're doing? Or maybe Dr. Quinn can talk a little bit about what is going on when it comes to insurance and revenue cycle management, and how does that work from DSE's perspective, and what's left for the practice to have? What do you need to do, if anything?
Well, as a practice, you're always going to have people make payments, give checks, a lot of those things. So it still operates like a traditional office in that sense, but our insurance billing is done with DSE, and we're a state provider, so we're with Medicaid. And in Ohio, that can be pretty complicated because they have multiple providers for Medicaid. So navigating those waters was definitely a big learning experience. I came from Colorado, where there's just one provider. So I was surprised to learn that there's multiple, and just getting all of that set up. So DSE does the billing for us, tracking the dates, and just of course making sure that people are eligible and active through the whole process. And then our insurance checks can go to Sheri's office as well. So depending on what an office's needs are, more or less can be of those tasks can be taken by her group.
Yeah, I was going to say we do the entire cycle, which means that even before the patient comes in, we're checking their insurance and making sure they actually have the insurance they think they do. And then we go, there's the clinic part where the clinic, maybe they'll pay in the clinic, maybe they'll set up their contract in the clinic. And then when they leave the clinic, we pick it back up and we follow up and make sure the payments are being made and make sure that the insurance claims are being paid and all of that kind of stuff. And it is a complete cycle. And our part of it is everything outside of the clinic. When they walk into the clinic and they set up the contract, or it's a special case and they want to make a payment arrangement, then the clinic does that. But we do everything before they come and after they leave.
Dr. Quinn, I'm just curious. My next question is really the advantage of using DSE. Maybe I'll start with you. Do you feel like one of the advantages having less staff, or if that's or the staff that's there, are they more focused on things that they're good at, which you kind of hinted at earlier?
I'd say it's going to be different for every office. A big part of why I'm with DSE was the overwhelmed part for me. I had too many tasks to do when I came to grow this group. So having DSE and Sheri and her team was just able to, give me peace of mind. Okay, these 4 things are being taken care of by them. If you are in your own private practice and you're growing and you need more expertise, then that might be why someone takes it on. Or someone's just your old business manager or your front desk person left who used to do everything, and now you don't know how to hire and train someone. So every office would have a different reason for kind of jumping in on that. For me, it was really just I had too many things to take care of. But as you say, with the team members that I can bring on in clinic, I don't have to worry about them being kind of a jack of all trades, focus on being the assistant, focus on being, a friendly receptionist, focus on being those things. And then the insurance expert is outsourced. The billing, the collections department is outsourced. So that was really, really kind of the way it went with us, where Sheri can have her super specialized team and I can focus on just getting the job done in clinic.
That's great. Sheri, anything to add to that?
I would just say that some of the other advantages that, to add on to what Dr. Quinn was saying is the team that we put in place to help with Dr. Quinn. He didn't have to train them. He didn't have to do any of their HR stuff. I did all of that. He didn't have to do anything except plug us in and tell us what he needed. And we started out doing very little, and we do much more now because his group has grown. But that's really the advantage is you can plug in an existing department of whichever service you need, and you don't have to build one. You don't have to create one. You don't have to hire and do all the HR stuff. And you don't have to know you don't have to be an expert at it. Usually they know somewhat of how it works. But we have found that we just allow them to grow with ease because they're not internally building structures. They already have the piece that they can plug in.
That's great. So as we start to wrap things up here, and you mentioned it earlier, but I think it's probably important. So you're working with a lot of different types of groups and also independent dentists, right, that have a single location. Are you seeing a trend towards you working with larger groups, or what are you seeing out there? I'd love to hear just kind of what your customer base looks like and what the needs that you see. Like, is there one thing that they tend to gravitate to more than others? Yeah,
for the most part, revenue cycle management is the biggest piece of it. And the common denominator everywhere with the big groups and the small groups is just a lack of people to do it. We have done some cleanup jobs where, it wasn't based on a lack of staffing. It was some other issue, but most of the time it's just the lack of staffing. There's a staffing issue. Most of it has to do with not really understanding what it takes to get the job done, how many people it takes, what kind of technology it takes. But staffing has, in the last few years, that's the biggest trend. That's the biggest pain point that most clients come to me with, is that we had people who could do this, and now we don't have anybody, or we have half the number of people. And that's for the small doctors and the big doctors, or the big groups as well. Their staff numbers are shrinking and their payroll numbers are increasing. And it's kind of very much like the insurance dilemma that I had 6 years ago, where the workload was increasing, but the revenue wasn't. And so we're kind of seeing almost a very similar problem. And, DSE, that's what we do. We solve that problem.
So any final thoughts before we sign off here? This is actually really good. And I know, just based on, what DSE does and what I hear from the people that visit our website and at the different meetings that we go to, that, HR is a huge pain point. Revenue cycle management is another one. The call center solution is really interesting. We hear a lot more about that, using that solution. I think that all goes back to what you just talked about, is you have a lack of staff, and the staff that you have, you want them to focus on what they're good at, right, and not be bogged down with things that they're not good at and don't really help the patients or the clinicians. So,
and if they're good staff, you want to keep them. You don't want to burn them out.
Great point. Yeah, excellent point. Dr. Quinn, any final thoughts?
Not necessarily. Just if you're a dentist, making sure to know your strengths, and sometimes handing over a few of those tasks gives you the peace of mind to enjoy your life a little bit more than trying to manage every single aspect, because it's not easy, especially as you grow.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of sum things up. Sheri, if people want to, anybody in the audience wants to find out more about what DSE does, if they want to contact you, how do they do that?
Well, you can reach us at our website, which is dsepractice.com. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. There's a contact us button, and there's even a link there to make an appointment, to have a Zoom meeting with me. So with me or one of my staff members.
So it's dsepractice.com. We'll drop the link in the show notes. But I'd like to thank Dr. Barry Quinn for taking some time out of his busy schedule to be on the podcast, and Sheri Jolly, who is the CEO of DSE. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great day.
And thanks everybody for listening in. I'm Bill Newman, and until next time, this is the Group Dentistry Now Show.
The Group Dentistry Now Show has listeners across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. If you like our show, subscribe today and please tell your colleagues about us.